In 2025, several nations are spiraling into crisis at a pace that's nearly impossible to comprehend. Some nations are experiencing runaway inflation that has hit triple digits, while unemployment is reaching historic highs. Simple basics, clean water, food, and gasoline, have become out of reach for millions. This isn't just about economic hardship. These are countries teetering on total collapse, their social fabric unraveling due to a dangerous mix of political chaos, financial disaster, and widespread unrest. Today, we're counting down the 10 fastest collapsing countries in the world right now. These are places that once held promise but now stand on the verge of disaster, with alarming statistics and complex root causes. Global instability and civil strife are peaking, driven by forces from broken economies to worsening climate events and severe humanitarian emergencies. In some cases, currencies have crashed by over 90%, and street-level security disappears by the day. What's behind these nations' rapid decline, and is there any hope left? Stay tuned as we uncover the top 10 countries at risk, and the powerful forces pushing them to the edge. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to Virtual Travel by Brian, and join us to discover which nations are fighting for survival, and why their struggles matter to us all. You won't want to miss these eye-opening insights. Number 1. Argentina. Argentina's situation in 2025 is a dramatic example of economic collapse. Hyperinflation has soared past 180%, causing the Argentine peso to lose over 95% of its value since the beginning of the crisis. Everyday groceries, once affordable, now cost millions of pesos, pushing the majority of Argentinians into poverty. The banking system is in disarray, with countless citizens unable to access their savings or even basic banking services. Unemployment is well over 35%, and more than two-thirds of the population live below the poverty line. Political gridlock, mounting debt, and frequent changes in leadership have deepened the crisis. Dependence on imported energy and food has left Argentina vulnerable to global price shocks and currency shortages. As faith in the state erodes, emigration is rising rapidly. For those unable to leave, daily life is a battle against rising prices, joblessness, and social unrest. Unless urgent reforms are made, Argentina's outlook remains bleak, making it one of the world's fastest collapsing countries in 2025. Number 2. Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's economic tailspin in 2025 is as severe as ever, with inflation estimated at 500%. The Zimbabwean dollar has become virtually worthless, and hyperinflation is so bad that entire paychecks are spent on a single meal. Shortages have become normal, from bread to fuel, even to basic medicines. Much of the collapse is rooted in years of political corruption, land mismanagement, and over-reliance on a single commodity. Widespread blackouts, water shortages, and collapsing infrastructure are daily realities. The government's repeated attempts to print more money have only worsened the crisis. Millions have left Zimbabwe in search of work and security, creating one of the largest diasporas in southern Africa. Those left behind face violence, hunger, and a state that seems unable or unwilling to help. Zimbabwe's collapse is a sobering lesson in the dangers of economic mismanagement and political dysfunction. Number 3. Syria. Syria's crisis has grown more acute in 2025, driven by over a decade of civil war, sanctions, and a devastated economy. More than 60% of Syrians live on less than $2 a day, with inflation at 120% driving basic food and fuel out of reach. Security is fragile, with turf wars between armed groups and government forces making entire cities unsafe. Public services have all but vanished, hospitals lack medicine, schools are closed, and clean water is scarce. Millions are internally displaced, living in makeshift shelters or refugee camps. Natural disasters and drought have only deepened the crisis, destroying crops and sparking new waves of displacement. International aid is hamstrung by bureaucracy, corruption, and the ever-present risk of violence. For most Syrians, daily survival is a struggle against hunger, poverty, and insecurity. Number 4. Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso has rapidly descended into chaos, driven by a surge in militant violence and a rapidly deteriorating economy. Over 1 in 5 citizens now require humanitarian assistance. Inflation has pushed food and fuel prices far beyond the reach of ordinary families. Armed insurgencies have displaced millions, and entire swathes of the country are controlled by non-state actors. Government authority is shrinking, with basic services like education and healthcare now absent in many regions. International sanctions and a shrinking economy have left Burkina Faso unable to import essential goods, further worsening the crisis. Drought and floods have damaged crops and left millions at risk of famine. Without urgent action, Burkina Faso's freefall will only accelerate. Number 5. South Sudan. South Sudan's humanitarian disaster continues to worsen in 2025. Civil conflict, currency collapse, and environmental disasters have left the country in tatters. More than 4.5 million have been displaced by violence, and inflation has reached nearly 250%. Food is scarce, and prices have skyrocketed due to repeated flooding and droughts that have decimated crops. Armed groups control much of the countryside, and government authority is weak or absent outside the capital. Infrastructure, roads, schools, and hospitals, lies in ruins, and international organizations struggle to reach those in need. The collapse of social order and the near-total failure of public services have made South Sudan one of the world's most unstable nations. Number 6. Ethiopia. Ethiopia's crisis in 2025 is driven by renewed conflict, economic collapse, and drought. Unemployment is at record highs, and inflation has surpassed 60%, making it nearly impossible for the average family to buy food or fuel. Political repression, internet blackouts, and restrictions on independent media have made it difficult to even track the full scale of the crisis. Conflict in Tigray and other regions has displaced millions, and famine is a daily threat. International aid is limited by security concerns and government interference. The collapse of the currency and skyrocketing prices have pushed millions into poverty. Ethiopia's rapid decline is a stark warning of the dangers of unchecked conflict and economic mismanagement. Number 7. Laos. Laos has quietly slipped into one of the fastest economic collapses in Asia. After years of unsustainable borrowing for infrastructure projects, the country's debt levels are now unmanageable. Inflation is over 40%, and the local currency has dropped sharply against the dollar. Fuel and food shortages are widespread, and blackouts are frequent. Many families can no longer afford medicine or basic groceries. The government, facing a cash crunch, has cut back on public spending, leading to widespread layoffs and rising unemployment. Corruption and a lack of transparency have further undermined confidence in the state, sparking protests and unrest. Laos now stands as a cautionary tale for the dangers of debt dependency and lack of economic diversification. Number 8. Somalia. Somalia's collapse in 2025 is driven by the triple threats of conflict, drought, and economic isolation. Over 80% of the population needs humanitarian assistance. Inflation and currency devaluation mean that food and medicine are luxuries for most. Armed groups control vast territories, making international aid delivery dangerous and unreliable. Health and education systems have all but collapsed. Waves of drought and locust infestations have destroyed crops, plunging millions into hunger. The government's authority is limited, and corruption diverts the little aid that reaches the country. Millions of children are malnourished, and diseases like cholera are on the rise due to poor sanitation. Somalia's position on this list is a tragic testament to decades of instability and neglect. Number 9. Chad. Chad's crisis in 2025 is the product of conflict, poverty, and environmental disaster. Over 70% of its people live below the poverty line, and inflation is at 35%, pushing food and fuel prices out of reach. Militias and armed groups control much of the countryside, and the government has lost its grip on security. Droughts and floods, worsened by climate change, have devastated farms and forced millions from their homes. Corruption and mismanagement are rampant, and the country's few public services are on the verge of collapse. International organizations face huge obstacles reaching those in need, and the humanitarian crisis shows no sign of easing. Number 10. Egypt. Egypt faces a severe economic and social crisis in 2025. Devastating floods and heatwaves have hammered the country, while inflation sits at 28%. The Egyptian pound has lost significant value, slashing the purchasing power of millions. Basic necessities like bread, medicine, and fuel are now unaffordable for most households. Unemployment is rising, and the government is mired in political infighting and public dissatisfaction. Mass protests are common as people demand relief from crushing prices and joblessness. Public debt has soared, and energy shortages have led to rolling blackouts and water rationing. Political instability and a lack of meaningful reforms have left Egypt teetering on the brink of collapse. Thanks for joining us. If you found this analysis helpful, subscribe to Virtual Travel by Brian for more deep dives into global crises. Like, share, and tell us what you think in the comments below. Stay tuned for more stories that matter.